Hello, I'd like to give an introduction to my new paper on identifying sentiment slang through orthographic pleonasm. So the background to this is, when I was a kid, I remember every now and then there would be a new slang word for sentiment that you would have to learn and use all the time. So when I was about 11, I think, the slang word was skill, and it became illegal, at least in my school, to use any word for good other than skill. So if you had a nice sweet, you would say this was a skill sweet. If someone was good at football, you would say they were a skill player. That kind of made sense. Or if you liked a lesson, then it would be a skill lesson. Or if it was a good teacher, you'd say skill teacher. And I think we did that for about 3 years until it fell out of fashion. And since then, there have been lots of different slang words, such as wicked for good, lush for good, and these words come in and out of favour. And this is a problem for me in my job detecting sentiment with computer programs, because the programs I use to detect sentiment rely on knowing what words people are going to use when they express sentiment. And so when a new word comes along, then my program won't work so well anymore, because it won't recognise that sentiment is being expressed through a different word. So people have asked me quite a lot in the past, how do you detect new sentiment words? And my answer has always been, well, I'd like to, but I can't. So this paper is my answer to those people. This is how I can now detect sentiment. And specifically, this is a process to detect new sentiment slang. And it uses something called orthographic pleonasm. And I'll explain what that is in a little bit. So what is it? What is orthographic pleonasm? Well, a little bit of background. First of all, you might recognise vocal spelling. So this is when we spell words to emphasise how we would pronounce that word if it's important somehow. So it's either for accent, maybe a regional or other accent, or for emphasis. So I live in Wolverhampton, and if I wanted to emphasise that I speak in a bit of a Wolverhampton accent, then I might spell with a Wolverhampton emphasis of spelling. So we don't like it would mean we don't like it, but just in a Wolverhampton or Black Country accent. And on the social web, you might see this quite a lot, with people adding extra letters to words that they're writing to emphasize that it's pronounced in a kind of a sing-song way. So the second word in this list, I would read in my head as being Mike. So I would read it as if it was singing the word a little bit. So pleonasm, where does that come from? So it's a obscure, to me anyway, a word from the Greek pleon, more or too much. And it's the use of more words or parts of words than are absolutely necessary for clear expression. So I saw a colourless white wall. You don't need to say it's colourless if it's white. The canine dog sat down. You can delete canine or dog and it says the same thing. So this is known about in sentences, and orthographic pleonasm is the use of more letters in a word than is needed to spell it. So Mike with the extra I's is an example of orthographic pleonasm, redundant I's, or hello with the redundant O's would be another example of orthographic pleonasm. So how does this relate to identifying new slang? So I'm going to go back to the origin of fashionable, or the way in which fashionable language is used. So it appears, then is widely used, and then usually it disappears or maybe lingers in the memory, but people don't use it so much, except maybe in an ironic way. So for example, good, you could use words like wicked or lush or skill in my youth. So the idea is that orthographic pleonasm is slang spelling, so maybe that will be used with slang words, so we can identify slang words through the slang spelling that's used for them. So to investigate this, we collected comments from UK female influencers' YouTube channels, and we counted how many orthographic pleonasms, spelling variations there were for each word, and then we manually checked the top 100 words to see whether they did reflect slang for positive sentiment. And we found 11 out of the top 100 words were genuinely slang words. Some of them I recognised, some of them I didn't recognise, but they were all slang ways of expressing positive sentiment, these 7 words. So the top word, I'd seen the word before, but I couldn't imagine how many spelling variants there were of it. 492 different ways of spelling the word Yasss out of 40,495 comments. So it's really heavily, I was about to say misspelt, but heavily spelt with the emphasis style of spelling, the vocal spelling style. So 11 out of 100 words fit my intuition that there might be slang spelling used with slang words. So YouTube commenters alone, just for these channels, 223 female YouTube influencer channels, used 492 spellings. That's an incredible number of different varieties. So, and these words were often used in just a single word comment. So you could see that the word genuinely was a slang word because it was used as a single word, which would only make sense if it had its own unique meaning. For example, early, I thought maybe this is a mistake, but I looked at a lot of the examples of the comments with the word early in, and it was clearly used to mean good. So the word early was used to mean good. So early, goals, slay, all meant good. All of these meant good. So dying, that's a bit of a strange word to mean good. I guess it's a bit like wicked, dying, but it usually meant dying with laughter. And there were some examples in this that were orthographic pleonasm, but not vocal spelling. And an example of this would be LYSM, love you so much. So this is orthographic pleonasm because it was spelled with many, many, many different variations of LY, S and M added into the word. But it's not vocal spelling because you can't really say LYSM. I don't think people say LYSM in normal language. OMG maybe in more normal language, but I don't think LYSM. So adding extra letters into it isn't vocal spelling because you can't pronounce the extra letters in the way that you could with a word like Yasss, for example. You can pronounce the extra 27 A's in Yasss, but you can't pronounce the extra 5 S's in LYSM. So it's orthographic pleonasm, but it's not vocal spelling. Okay, so I think what's going on here is that the extra letters allude to the vocal style of emphasis. So people are so used to adding vocal emphasis through extra letters that they now do it in a situation where it's not vocal. Here's an example of the frequency of use of some of these slang words detected, and you can see that all of the words we detected had, or all these words anyway, had a period in which the use frequency dramatically increased. And some of them, like slay, have gone out of fashion now. So in 2016, if you use the word slay to mean good, you were on message, you were using current slang. But if you use it nowadays, people will think, oh, that's a bit dated, we don't use that anymore. And ILYSM is also a little bit dated now. The goals is on the way out, but early is still on the rise. So if you use early now, you might be seen as trendy. There were also other ways in which orthographic pleonasm occurred. For example, booster words. So way, I love you way too much. So the word way as a booster word was often misspelt, and many other booster words as well. Exclamations were also, I said misspelt, I didn't mean misspelt, spelt with the pleonasm. And exclamations also often had extra letters added in with many different variations. So these are in the top 100 words as well. And surprisingly, maybe there were nouns that were spelled with extra letters, and these were typically the things that were liked. So when people were saying they liked something, they might add extra letters into the thing that they liked. So you sometimes meaning the influencer, or girl meaning the influencer. And also conversational words, and perhaps the strangest of these would be and. So hello, I can imagine saying that, but I can't imagine saying and. But there were many variations of and where extra letters were added in. And I think it meant to indicate like uncertainty around the and. So not lengthening it, the word and, but emphasizing that it was meaning uncertainty. So like maybe hesitant and. So in summary, the orthographic pleonasm method finds new sentiment slang words by their extensive spelling variations. We needed manual checking of the top words to identify the 11% that were sentiment slang, from the top 100 anyway. And we found other new language uses such as non-vocal spelling that seemed to be imitating vocal spelling with the orthographic pleonasm. So in the end, I think it's a practical way to identify new sentiment slang, and a simple way, just checking the spelling variations.